really happy to have all of you here. And I'm really happy that GSAR is recording this because I want you guys to share this with your offices. Those that are watching it on the playback obviously won't get CE, but I think your life is more important than 1 hour CE credit. So if something you learn here can help save you or save one of your clients, it's well worth it. So I've got lots and lots to share with you, and we're going to get started right away so that we can get it all in. This is my contact information here. The recording is going to be made available to you, but if you want the slides as well, just as normal, those of you that have taken my classes before, shoot me an email. I'll be happy to send you the whole presentation. Those of you, again, that have taken my classes, I like to put humor into things. This is a very serious topic and we respect realtor safety, but this isn't meant to be scary. I don't want anybody to, give up their license after this class based on the things that I'm talking about with you today. But this is real life. It is the reality of our situation as realtors. There are all kinds of statistics about how dangerous our job is. What I hope to bring to you today is a different perspective, help you think about safety from different points of view. And we'll talk about that as we go through. So even if you are a veteran realtor, if you have a background in another career that had safety in it, please still listen with an open mind today, because maybe you'll get reminded of something that has gone to the back of your mind in this crazy market. And also remember that I'm not your broker. I'm going to give you lots of best practices today, but at the end of the day, your broker holds your license and your broker is in charge. If your broker is not here today, I would strongly encourage them to watch this presentation and implement and update. You should update your office policies on a regular basis. It's not a set it and forget it kind of thing. So you want to be keeping that forefront of the mind. I always like to start off talking about Beverly Carter. If you are not familiar with Beverly's story, please visit the beverlycarterfoundation.org. Beverly Carter was a realtor in the Midwest who was kidnapped at a showing and ultimately killed. Her story is an interesting one because in theory, she did a lot of things right. And in the interest of time, I won't tell you the whole story, but if you're not familiar with her story, please check it out. And, honor her memory. Her son, Carl Carter Jr., has made it his life's mission to share her story so that realtors can stay safe in the future. When I think about realtor safety, one of the most important things that we need to remember is situational awareness. And when I wrote this class, I wrote it with a local police officer because I wanted a law enforcement point of view. And we talked a lot about situational awareness, and this applies in your office. It applies on a showing. It applies on a listing. It applies anywhere in your life. We live in a crazy world where active shooter situations can happen when you're at the grocery store. So situational awareness is simply being aware of your surroundings at all times. And we're going to talk a little bit later this afternoon about what that looks like in different scenarios, but just being very mindful of where you are, whether that's arriving early, whether that's driving by before the appointment, if the property is vacant and you have the privilege of going there, ahead of your buyers, just so you can be very familiar. And that way your senses are on less overload when you're first arriving at the property itself. Another very important piece to realtor safety is body language. And when we think about human body language, we need to think about how that relates to our jobs. And we're meeting strangers, so we don't know if their body language is normal for them, if their body language is out of the ordinary for them that day. Creating a baseline is important, but you don't have that at the first meeting. And, I have certainly myself been in situations where things just felt off. In one circumstance that, I usually talk about, the buyer wasn't looking at the property. He was only looking at me. He was not talking about the property. He wasn't asking questions. As I was filling the silence with information or asking him questions, it was one word answers or no response at all. And he just was not at all looking at the house. And that's what we were there to do. It was in a very rural setting. It happened to be a foreclosure years ago when we actually had foreclosures. And his body language was just very, very strange. And one of the main things that people tell you when you talk about realtor safety, right? What have we all always heard? The buddy system, which, not saying the buddy system is bad. I'm just saying they'll probably find two of you instead of one, because one of the girls in my office is not going to provide a lot of protection. But and then trusting your gut, right? And in that situation, where here I am with Mr. Buyer, we start on the outside. I always start on the outside of the property. His body language is very off. He's not looking at the house. He's not looking at the grounds. He's only looking at me, and I can feel that. And so we go inside the property. I'm behind him, not letting him get behind me, which is another safety protocol that I always follow. But he's not looking at the house. And it was a foreclosure. It was a summer day. I left the door to the house open because, in my opinion, in that situation, I need to be able to get out if I need to get out quickly. And he walked behind me and shut the door. And at that point, all the little alarm bells in me were going off saying, you need to get out of this situation. So I just walked right over to that door, opened the door, walked right out to my car and said, I've completely double booked myself on an appointment. We'll have to reschedule. And he did follow me out. I said I would be in touch. I left the door unlocked. I called the listing agent from the end of the driveway and said, look, this is what happened. Can you come meet me? Or, someone, how do you want me to handle it to make sure the property is secure, but I'm not going back in there by myself. And my office never heard from that person again. Was he going to hurt me? I don't know, but I wasn't going to stick around to find out. So being mindful of body language is very important. Here's a few items to look for. Pupils that are dilated, eyes looking other places other than the property, fixated on you or other than the surroundings. Upper body, their shoulders back, hands in the pocket, or clenched fist. Any person in law enforcement will always tell you hands in the pocket makes them very uncomfortable. Some people just put their hands in their pockets. It doesn't mean that they're going to harm you, but just be mindful of that. Feet planted and apart, or not moving, not walking around the property, getting in one part of the house and then, not leaving that portion of the house is another potential warning sign for body language. And I have the little graphic of the person fidgeting versus the person relaxed. In my area, meth labs are pretty prevalent. I'm not sure, you guys, if that's something that is happening often for you, but that's a safety thing. I may be working with buyers and there's tenants in the property. I would like to think that the seller wouldn't list the property, with a meth lab being there. Claire, what is your, so I'm sorry, St. Lawrence County. So I'm in upstate New York. I'm your neighbor to the north. So I'm about 2.5 hours from you guys. Meth labs are prevalent here. They're cheap. Supposedly they're easy to make, and we have them quite often. And there are different warning signs that you can identify when you enter a property that there may be drug activity in that property. Typically, it's a smell, a fuel smell, a paint thinner smell, a hospital smell, a sour or vinegary smell, even an ammonia smell like window cleaner. Most commonly, it's cat urine. You can also look for evidence of large quantities of things like batteries, those individual propane containers, anything, again, out of the ordinary. A couple of those things around the house is not a sign of a meth lab. Dozens and dozens of them in a property is out of the ordinary, right? We know when things look out of the ordinary, and that stuff is toxic. Just a little bit of it, inhaling just a little bit of it can make you very sick or kill you. So in that circumstance, you get out of the property and, you let the seller know that something not good may be happening there. And, they need to figure that out before you can re-enter the property. At a minimum, it's not a good smell that's very marketable, right? And at a worst case scenario, we've got some illegal stuff going on. These are all additional items that are used in the production of drugs. Again, if you're seeing a mass quantity of these items, those are things to look for that can be red flags to you. I went to list a property one time and the seller met me. There were tenants. And I say tenants because typically, if the seller is conducting drug activity, they're not going to list their house and invite the world in to see. So, customarily this comes from tenants. And the tenant would not, the gal that was there would not let the owner into the property. It was only she was going to let me in, and she was nice, pleasant, but there was a lot of this stuff in the house. There were safes, there were weapons, there was additional drug paraphernalia. And then when you get down into the basement, there's a locked room, where she's got a key to access it. And I just went up and said to the seller, look, I don't know exactly what's going on in there, but I can't invite other realtors and potential buyers to be exposed to that environment. And he said, oh, I know, there's police activity here all the time. I know there's drug activity going on. I can't list the property. When you get them out, when you get it cleaned up, give me a call. We can discuss at that point. But it's one listing is not worth risking my safety, another buyer's safety, another realtor's safety. So that was a personal choice I made. Okay, let's talk about some best practice for buyer safety. So for me, it's arrive early whenever you can. And sometimes our schedules are crazy, and that doesn't allow us to do that. My county, St. Lawrence County, is a big area. So meeting at the office is not always practical, but that may be your business model. If the office is on the way or whatever your broker sets as a policy, that may be the policy. That's a good one too. But for me, that's not practical. So I arrive early, 5, 10, 15 minutes early, so that I can get the lay of the land and look for ways out. If I needed to get out of this situation, what is my easiest way out? For me, that's always parking my car, headed out, or if I'm going to park on the street in a place where I can't be blocked in. Oftentimes, I will park on the street and leave the driveway open for the buyer. Number one, I think it's courteous. Let the buyer pull in the driveway, get the feel of what it's like pulling in the house. And I don't want them to block my car in. So if there's potential for that, I'll park on the street. If it's a rural property, I'm going to back in, make sure that my car is pointed out so that I can get the heck out of there if I have to. Keep the keys in the ignition with you if you're in a safe place. I think better advice is just keep them in your pocket on your person. I wouldn't, leave them in the car unless they're in the ignition, because again, you want to be able to take off and get out of there. In some of the city areas, it's not safe to leave the keys in the car because, you may come out and find your car is gone. So just make sure that they're on your person. So again, you can get out of there in a hurry. I go into the house, turn the lights on, and I unlock the door of the house ahead of time. One way in, one way out. I don't unlock every door, and I just unlock the door that I want them to come in, that I'm going to take them through, and make sure lights are on so that we're not fumbling through the dark together. Whenever possible, meet the clients outside. So again, I'm there early. I got the lights on, I've got my one way in unlocked, and then I either stand on whatever the porch is, the sidewalk, out by my car, so that they're not surprising me by coming into the house. Meet them outside, walk around the exterior first. Number one, you got to see the exterior of the house. You got to see what it looks like from the outside, but this allows you to not be in a confined space where you can, breathe a little bit, watch their body language, and just kind of observe things as you're starting on the outside. Schedule showings during the daylight hours. I know you guys are getting limited this time of year, just like I am. And pretty soon it's going to be dark at 4:30. I don't show property in the dark. Number one, you can't see anything, right? So what's the point of going for a showing? We're going to have to go back in the daylight. But for safety, I don't go in the dark. Not only if I know my buyers, but you don't know who else. Sometimes the predator, sometimes the danger isn't your client. Sometimes it's someone else who is trying to gain access to the property or harm you in some way. And, you're in the wrong place at the wrong time. It may not be your client. So I schedule showings and do showings in the daylight hours. As I mentioned earlier, I stay behind my people, especially on the stairs. This is a hard one for me. I want to be, touring them through the property, showing them things. We have a lot of old scary basements in St. Lawrence County. And, I want to lead the charge down to that basement, but, being cautious and putting my safety first is important. So I'm there with them, but I'm letting them go first. And then keeping your vehicle full of gas. Again, if you needed to make a quick getaway, if you're out in the middle of nowhere, your anxiety is, racing, your adrenaline, you want to make sure that your car is fully gassed up and ready to go. That's a hard one for me. You can ask my husband. I really struggle with that. Okay, let's talk about some safety tools that you can use. Does anyone here use HomeSnap? Anybody have the HomeSnap app? I'm going through, there's dozens of little sheets of you. I see a couple of hands going up. So if you have HomeSnap, this is a great feature of HomeSnap. If you don't have HomeSnap, definitely check it out. HomeSnap comes with a safety timer. So on your smartphone, when you open the HomeSnap app at the property that you are at, you see this start a safety timer right here in the middle of the listing. And when you tap on that, it's going to pull up your contact list in your entire phone, and you can designate one of your contacts to be your person for this particular showing. Now pick someone who's going to have their phone, okay? If your spouse or your best friend never answers their phone, don't pick them, because what this is going to do is notify them if there's a problem. So you set your timer, you say how long you plan to be in the property. My emergency contact happens to be one of my best friends that is a realtor, because I know she always has her phone with her. And then when I set that, you'll see here in the middle, it's a countdown. At any time, I can stop the timer and then nothing happens. No one's the wiser. At any time, I can add time, because maybe my clients are lovely people. They're not going to kill me, but they're talkers, and I need to add more time. Or if 30 minutes, it's only been 10 minutes and I'm in distress, I can hit the big red distress button in the app, and it's going to immediately send a message to my friend Liz and say, Brittany Mata is in distress at 25 Pine Street. Click here to call Brittany, click here to call 911. Okay, so that's one feature. If you use HomeSnap, test that out with a buddy. It will only work if you're in the vicinity of the property. I like that one a lot. That gives me peace of mind. I also have an Apple Watch. My Apple Watch has cellular service attached to it. It has a fall detection feature. So maybe no one is trying to harm me, but I'm just a klutz and I fall off the back steps, locking the house up after my buyers have gone, and I can't get up. My Apple Watch will say, we've detected a fall, calling 911 and 54321, and I can cancel it or it will call. That's a great feature to have. You can also use Find My Friends in Apple. Have a trusted person, again, your spouse, your friend, your realtor friend, your broker, that knows where you are and can find you. So if you're out of touch for an hour and a half, someone can pull up and say, geez, she's been at this property for way too long. We need to go there and find out what's going on. So I love my Apple Watch for that. There's all kinds of different smart watches out there, as well as other bracelets and safety tools. Facebook, Google, the internet is your friend in a safety tool. When I get a cold call from someone, which doesn't happen often in my business, but depending on your business model, if you are buying leads or getting leads from your office, they're probably strangers. And so don't be afraid to Google them, look them up on social media. I will tell you that criminals are on the internet, just like the rest of us. You may have friends in common with them. ForeWarn is a great app that does background checks, but some people haven't been caught or haven't committed their first crime yet. So these are tools. There's no end all be all. We just need to be very aware of our situations at all times. But someone new to me, I definitely plug their name into Facebook and see if anybody comes up, mutual friends, am I getting the right person? Do a quick Google search, just, see what you come up with to give myself a little peace of mind before I get to the property. There are other apps out there. ForeWarn is a good one. InvisiWare, no, not InvisiWare. There's a bracelet with a little button that you can push. I've had Guard Llama in the past. It goes on your keychain. again, a button you can push that alerts the authorities that you're in distress and gives them your signal. That was a few years ago before we had Apple Watches. Apple AirTags are great for keeping track of loved ones. It's meant to keep track of your stuff, right? You put it on your car keys or your purse. I sewed one into the tongue of my son's sneaker when I sent him to third grade this year, because, you know, he might lose his backpack if something went awry or in the event of an emergency, but he's probably going to have his shoes on. So, you know, just things like that to give us an extra peace of mind. If God forbid the worst happened, you know, we have some extra protection. Here's some video tour tips for you guys. I know with COVID, we did a lot of video tours, and I, for one, felt very safe doing video tours because it's just me and my phone. And as long as I don't trip and fall down the stairs, I'm probably not going to get hurt. But one of my agents was doing a video tour. She left the front door unlocked and she was in the basement recording a video, and someone entered the home and tried to attack her. She was able to get by them and get up the stairs, get out of the property. But she didn't have a good description of the person, and they were gone by the time the police got there. So to this day, she doesn't know who it was. So just because you're on a video tour, don't let your guard down. These are my tips for that. Walk through the house before you ever even get on camera. Even if you've shown the house before, even if it's your listing, take that walk through without the phone in your hand so that your focus can be your surroundings, situational awareness. Check closets and basements and other hidden areas ahead of time. Lock yourself into the property so that you don't leave that access point open, because what she suspects happened was, you know, someone saw her vehicle, it had her company plastered on the side of the vehicle, and, you know, they came into the house, found her in the basement and tried to attack her. And if possible, stop filming while you go up and down the stairs so that you can give your full concentration. If you're on FaceTime, obviously you don't want to hang up and get back on. But if I'm shooting a video that I'm going to then send on to people, I don't film myself going up and down the stairs. Just number one, it sounds like a herd of elephants, no matter who you are, just going up and down the stairs doesn't sound very good. And that way I can focus on the steps. Maybe the bottom step is loose. Maybe it's slippery. Maybe the top step is loose. If I'm going to fall all the way down, you know, I want to have my concentration and my hands free to hold on to those railings. So just keep your guard up everywhere, even when you're doing video tours. Be mindful of that. So what can potential danger look like? So these are some actual text messages received by one of the agents in St. Lawrence County. So also, for those of you that don't know me, I'm the president of the St. Lawrence County Board of Realtors. So I feel like when I say my agents, I mean all my members, because I feel like, you know, they're all my members. I got a message one day from one of my members, said, you know, this just doesn't seem right. I got these series of text messages. I'm going to send them to you. You know, what do you think? So here's the first one. She's the green. She says, sounds good. If you need anything else, please let me know. He says, I need a date. This was a female talking to a male. To go out on a date. She says, excuse me, joking. You asked if there's anything else I needed. I said, I need to go out on a date. She responds, or no, he continues, maybe you know some good places. Oh, I understand. I'm native to the area and I can make recommendations. She said, I thought, you know, I didn't think, you know, that we were going down that path. So side note, she's very active outside. If you look her up on social media, she's four-wheeling, she's camping, she's a really outdoorsy kind of girl. So he says, besides the outdoors, what do you do for fun? And so she hadn't told him, obviously, that she liked the outdoors. He had found that on his own. I don't go out much, but I wanted to know for when I do decide to go out, unless you know someone that's dating. And she says, I find this very odd. Is this a joke? I have a boyfriend. Apparently you're not interested in the property. He says, I am interested in the property. I'm waiting to hear from my lender. How do you find it odd? What's odd about it? I'm looking to meet people if I move there. So, you know, I told her, you know, I find that kind of odd too. She said, well, I've told him I'm not available. I canceled. I talked to my broker. My broker said, just cancel the appointments. He only wanted to see vacant listings. My next slide is about warning signs. So we sent a message out to the membership and just said, look, this may be nothing. Just wanted to make everybody aware. And 5 or 6 of my female members came forward and said, I got the same things from him, asking if, I want to go see a property. Okay, what property are you interested in? Whatever you have that's vacant and I can see right now. Well, it's a big county, right? Like, so these are some warning signs. Urgency without specificity, right? I just want to see something today. I don't care what it is. I don't care what area it's in. I don't care the price. I don't care the size. I just want to see something. Asking questions about whether the property is vacant or not, or the proximity of neighbors. Now, some people like privacy. Nothing wrong with liking privacy, but we're in real estate. We know what questions seem out of the ordinary to us. So if it seems out of the ordinary, if it's hurting you or bothering you in your gut, bring someone else with you, bring someone else in, to talk about what the person is looking for in the property. What do you, okay, you want to see 123 Northwoods Road. What is it that you like about that property? Can you give me an idea of what you're looking for in a property? And kind of try to throw them off their game. That will give you an idea of, yes, they are serious and they actually want to look, or this is someone that could potentially harm me. But what about sellers? And before the class started, I was telling Danielle, this topic is something that's very dear to my heart because I had a very close call at a potential listing appointment before COVID. I was working in the office. The phone rang, cold call. A man on the other line says he owns a property in a rural area in St. Lawrence County, gives me the address, and he wants to list it. When can I meet him at the property? And, I said, today's full. I can do it tomorrow. Is that okay? Sure. We set up the appointment. And that was the end of it because he's a seller. So I don't ask about pre-approval. I don't ask about photo ID. I got his name. And I get to the property early. It's a very rural property on a dirt road. I backed my car in and I am just starting to get out of the car when an SUV is coming down this dirt road driveway to me. And I see there are 2 people in the car. Okay, maybe he's brought someone with him. There are no license plates on this vehicle. 0, nothing on the front, nothing on the back. Because that's sometimes I will do that. If I'm at a rural property, I'll snap a quick picture without anyone noticing of the license plate and text it to my broker or someone in my office so they, at least know the license plate of who I met. There's no license plates on this black SUV. So 2 people get out, 2 men. It's the middle of the summer. They have long pants on, black shirts. They both put on black, heavy gloves. And one man walked around the back of the house. I never saw him again. This property appears to be a seasonal camp. There is a long staircase going up to where you enter the building. And, so I'm starting to feel a little anxious, starting to rethink my choices here about selling real estate, but, nevertheless, walk forward, 1 foot in front of the other, over to this potential seller, extend my hand, to shake his hand and introduce myself. Lovely property you have here. I was looking at the maps online. Would you like to show me around the outside first? He says, no, I want to start inside. Okay, so up the stairs we go. I let him go first. I didn't let him get behind me. And we enter into this property that clearly no one has been to in a very long time. There was one wall that was all windows and the curtains were drawn. And, so he's not saying a word. He's not telling me about the property. He's not talking about the property. He's not telling me the best parts, the worst parts, nothing. And so there's a loft upstairs that was all closed off. And I kind of walked over to where the windows were and said, it's a beautiful view. Can you give me an idea of the property lines? I looked at the map. Can you give me an idea of the property lines? And at this point, he says, let's go upstairs. And I said, yeah, I think I've left something in my car. And he kind of stepped to block my way to the door. And I was just beeline straight for that door. I hit the knob, flew down those stairs, and, gave him one of these waves and said, I've got to go to another appointment. My office will be in touch. And I left. I called my broker right away, explained the situation, went back to the office, very shaken up. And she did reach out to him and was just going to come up with an excuse, something happened and I had to return. But we never heard from him again. The number that she called was the number that I had, went to nothing. It was like a burner phone. There was no voicemail, no nothing. It was dead. And the property never went on the market with another realtor. Would that person have hurt me? I don't know. I wasn't going to stick around to find out. But I think as realtors, a lot of times we think that the buyer is the big bad wolf. The buyer is who's going to hurt us. But if you think about it, when you go to a listing, that phone rings, there are no listings, it's a tight market. Will you come list my house? Yes, we don't even hesitate. We burn rubber out of the office parking lot, right? With very little research. And let's face it, our options are limited. You don't ask a seller for a letter of pre-approval. So if I were going to harm someone, I would target realtors and invite them to their house to list, because we don't think twice, right? So don't always think of the buyer as the big bad wolf that's going to get you, because sellers are just as dangerous, or potential sellers. I would suggest that you match names. Yep. So Karen in the chat, always look up information, ownership, meeting, ask questions on why they're selling. Absolutely. So that's what we're talking about here. Match names to make sure that deeds and records and other resources, Google their phone number, schedule appointments during the daylight hours. Again, use social media, stay behind your client, let them guide you, and always, always trust your gut. No one listing is worth your life, is worth your safety. And, Beverly Carter is a tragedy, and I don't want to hear about all of you or any of you in that circumstance. So just be mindful that sellers can put us in that position too. Foreclosures and vacant houses. Again, your client may not be the danger. When visiting or listing a foreclosure, pay extra attention to your surroundings, take someone with you if at all possible, and walk through the house before taking your listing photos or your videos. Even if you've been there before, be cautious. This is the picture of a vacant house. It was not my listing, but it was on the market for several months. And this is in a village. We don't have a lot of cities in my area, but the hospital is, 3 blocks down from this house. There's, doctors' houses all around this property. So I'd shown it many times before. It was vacant, so I set up my appointment with the listing agent, all good. I get there with my buyers. We were kind of doing a marathon day that day, meaning we go from one property to the next property to the next property. And so I couldn't get there early. They were just with me, but I get the door unlocked, I get the lights on, and it's not right. There's beer bottles, there's pizza boxes, there's sleeping bags, there's drug paraphernalia. And I looked at my buyers and said, we're out of here. Somebody is staying here, squatting here, living here. This is not safe. We're out. And I, kind of get them out the door, lock the door, call the listing agent. Listing agent calls the police, and there were squatters. They had broken in and they were living there. And you don't know what somebody's going to do if they feel threatened. You don't know what someone's going to do if they're on some type of a drug. They may react in a way that they wouldn't normally react. So your client may not always be the danger. You may be walking into danger. And in this circumstance, I felt very safe walking into this house. I had shown it many times, and, there were neighbors everywhere. So the fact that nobody saw anything, they were good at covering their tracks. It's one of the reasons why I don't mind showing property in the snow, because you can see tracks and you can see who's been where and what they've been doing. And, if they're trying to jump in the window, you can probably try and see it. So situational awareness, seeing something out of the ordinary, see something, say something. That's another realtor safety term we use. I see somebody in the chat here. Are there any rules regarding concealed carry? So if my understanding of the law is If you have a concealed carry permit, then you can conceal carry. Now, the new law that just went into effect September 1st, if that's what you're referring to, if the business is kind of backwards how I think they did it. If the business is going to allow you to conceal carry, they have to have a sign. I believe that's how it is, but I would check with your local sheriff's department for more information on that. I talked to a state trooper a couple of weeks ago about that law, and he said they were still trying to figure it all out. So I'm not the expert on that at this point. Okay, let's talk about office policies for a minute. And we're kind of going through this quickly, guys, but I want you to get all the information. You're welcome. If you don't have office policies for safety, please, please, please talk to your broker, talk to your office admin to get things put into place. I'm sure all of you remember just last year, our friends at Bridgeview Real Estate in Watertown had that terrible tragedy with the disgruntled realtor going into his former brokerage, shooting and killing his two former brokers. That was an active shooter situation. Thankfully, there was a third person in that office that escaped gunshot wounds and was able to identify the shooter and let the authorities know right away who it was and who they were dealing with. Active shooter situations can happen anywhere. It can happen at real estate offices. It can happen, at trade expos that we go to, anything and anywhere. That's the world we live in. So being very mindful of that, having office policies in place, camera systems, safety words. And what I mean by safety words is we used to say I need the red folder. I forgot the red folder. So if someone was in the office and, they were threatening you in some way, you could call someone and say, you left the red folder here. I know you need that. That means I'm in distress. Rather than say, help me, I'm in danger. Because sometimes danger doesn't come in shooting. Sometimes danger comes in and, they're rambling or ranting, or it escalates because they didn't get their way or their offer wasn't accepted or whatever the case may be. Those safety words are important. Making sure that you have well-lit parking areas and telling someone where you are. In my office, it's our policy that, if you come and go, you just, tell whoever's there where you're headed to. I'm headed out to such and such a showing. I'm headed out to such and such a listing. I also share my Google Calendar with my spouse so that, if something ever did happen to me, he would know exactly, the address of where I was going last or what my appointments were for that day. And, taking someone with you. I kind of jokingly said in the beginning, the buddy system would just mean that there would be two of us to find, but sometimes just throwing a potential criminal off their game is enough to have it not happen. Like if they had a plan that they were going to meet you and they only had to worry about you, and then there's two of you, that throws off their game. It throws off their plan. So don't be afraid to take someone with you, someone from your office, a friend, a spouse, whatever, if you feel that you may be putting yourself into a potentially dangerous situation. And when we talk about buyers, we talk about ID and letters of pre-qualification, but standards of practice now tell us whether or not we can ask prospective buyers for that information. So your broker has already determined this for you. And I hope that all of you that are on here know what your office policy is and that you're following it. But the seller can require proof of ID and or pre-approval. So if it comes from the seller that's required, then you can ask for it. And it's perfect. You have to ask for it, right? Not you can, you have to. It's perfectly acceptable. So if your broker's standard of practice says, yeah, we don't require a pre-approval, but I'm going to show a listing and, I pull it up or I call to schedule the appointment and Krista Jones says, hey, I'd love to let you show that property, but the seller's requiring letter of pre-approval. Can you send that over to me? I can now go back to my buyer and say, I'm required to provide this. So you're not violating standards of practice by that. The other thing I will tell you is standards of practice says that it's required. It doesn't say you can't ask. So if you get a cold call buyer, Nothing says that you can't or you shouldn't say to them, have you talked to a bank? Have you thought about how you will pay for the property? Will you be financing? Will it be cash? What bank were you thinking of using? Right? Would you like recommendations? All of that falls within the SOP. What you can't do is say, oh, you're not pre-approved. I can't take you until you're pre-approved, unless the seller says that. Does that make sense to everyone? We understand the difference there? Okay, so if it comes from the seller, it's acceptable, because we always have to follow fair housing, but keep in mind that criminals are not a protected class. So if someone is going to harm you, if your safety feels threatened, your feelings are valid feelings and your safety is paramount. So I sometimes have had realtors say, well, I felt uncomfortable, I felt uneasy, but I didn't want to be accused of violating fair housing. And my response is, your safety is paramount. So whatever you have to say to get out of that situation, there's an emergency, I double booked an appointment, I forgot my phone in the car, whatever you have to say to get yourself out, and then you deal with the rest later, because criminals are not a protected class. Okay. And all of your brokers, even if your broker's not on here, I know your broker would tell you that your life and your safety is more important than any one sale. Any sales are going to come and go in your real estate career, but there's only one of you, and your safety is more important to your broker. Okay. Now, let's talk for a minute about open houses. In my market, open houses, we don't do them because they don't work. So I'm kind of off the hook, but I know in your area, you guys do often open houses more often than I do. So open house safety tips: always have a sign-in sheet. This is, one that's part of the slides. I'll send it to you if you want. Make people sign in. Make sure you can read what they write. They're not putting John Doe. Make sure, that you can actually read what they write. If the seller says they have to show ID to come in, that's acceptable. So make a little sign that says that, put it in a nice little frame, please provide proof of identification per the seller's request, and you write down their legal name and who they are coming into the property, not just for lead generation purposes, but because the seller has a right to know who's coming and going. I would also suggest that you bring someone from your office or call a local vendor. I'm sure your friends at M&T Bank or any of your other local vendors would be willing to partner with you, and they can bring their information and they can talk to prospective buyers. Home inspectors are a good person to have come, anyone who has a spare couple hours. I tend to arrive when the owners are still there so that I'm not going to the property when nobody's there. Ask everyone to sign in and take an accompanied tour. Gone are the days of, look around and let me know if you have questions, because you don't know what windows they're going to unlock, what drawers they're going to go through. We ask our sellers to remove weapons, valuables, and medications, but sometimes they don't do that. Or sometimes, I had a gal in the class last week when we taught this that said her sellers had a locked box in the medicine cabinet with medication, and a buyer went into the bathroom and stole the whole lockbox. So don't allow unaccompanied tours. Take someone with them. And if no one is available, ask the buyers to wait outside for their turn. Still blame it on COVID if you want to. Blame it on flu season. Say it's the seller's policy. Talk to your seller and say, look, we're going to do an open house, but this is going to be best practice because you don't want strangers wandering through your house. So here's how we're going to do it. Are you okay with that? Your seller's going to go, yeah, I want that. And ask people to wait their turn. When the open house is over, lock the main doors, check the upper floors, look for any stragglers, keep someone there with you, and make sure that the house is completely secure when you're leaving. Okay. And when I'm checking everything, I've, again, one door in, one door out. I don't unlock every single door for an open house. I want everybody to come in the same way and everybody to go out the same way. And, keeping track of people as we're going through. That was one blessing that COVID brought us, was those more structured open houses once we could have them again. If you do any kind of property management, so you are working with tenants in any way, know your state and local laws. Use attorney-approved rental applications so that you're not violating fair housing, but everyone is treated the same. And engage law enforcement whenever it's necessary, because it's very, very important to stay in your lane. My job as a property manager is to have a strong network of professionals to handle tenant issues that arise. Cleaning up a mess like this is not my job. You don't know what potentially hazardous materials are in there, what could hurt you, drugs, weapons, needles, anything that could potentially harm you. This is a job for a professional. It's not the job of a property manager. So my job is to have a strong network of professionals that I can call when a tenant issue does arise, so that, I know that my seller is going to be taken care of and their property is taken care of, and I'm staying in my lane. Okay, let's wrap up with some online security tips, because our virtual safety is just as important as our physical safety. Sometimes we are dealing with sensitive client information, and we want to make sure that no one is getting scammed on our account. So I use a program called OneDrive. It's a Microsoft product, and that's what I use to keep all of my files securely. And you can, this is the computer view. You can also log in from anywhere and see that. I could access all of my files from any of your computers. All I need is my secure sign-on that also sends me a text to authenticate that it's actually me. A program like Carbonite is also very good. That is an automatic online backup system that's going to make a copy of your whole hard drive, so that if your computer died or your computer was hacked, then you could just wipe out your computer and restore it back again. They also make external hard drives. You guys have probably seen those. The trouble with those is you have to remember to do it. And you usually remember to do it after there's a problem, and then it's too late. And several years ago, our association, St. Lawrence County Board of Realtors, QuickBooks, was stolen, locked up, encrypted, and they wanted us to pay thousands of dollars to get that information back. And at that time, I was not a decision maker. Had I been a decision maker, I would have said, no way, we'll recreate the files because we have everything backed up. The problem was we didn't have everything backed up. So now we do. So now if something like this pops up on my machine, I can say, that doesn't bother me. Wipe out my computer. I'll start all over because I can just reload everything. So if you're not backing up with something, get something that works, and something that's going to help keep your clients' information safe, because you don't want to have to be the one to give them a call and say, my computer was hacked and all your information is vulnerable and out there. So I know we went through that really quickly. It was less interactive than some of the other classes that I usually do, but is there anything we didn't talk about that you guys wanted to talk about? Any action steps that you want to take based on the information we shared today? Put it in the chat or unmute yourselves.
Brittany, I would like to share something. I did real estate in California back in the 80s and 90s. And one of my colleagues was kidnapped by a buyer. She met him at a vacant house and she was missing for 3 days. Thankfully, she wasn't killed, but it came close. But they found her in Arizona.
So scary.
Yeah, so I work by referral.
Me too. Honestly, me too. And I know that's hard. I've been doing this a while. I'm sure obviously you have too. When you're first getting started, it's so exciting. It's so invigorating. And, but now, I work by referral. You've got to come from somebody that I know, but that's my business model. Okay. So in the chat, only unlocking the front door, right? And I used to go around and unlock every door, because what if they want to open the slider? We can open the slider and then we can lock the slider again. And I have control over that. So that but I know where every door is, and I know how to unlock it and how to get out. So if there was an emergency, I can get out very quickly. Getting to the property early whenever possible. Highly recommend that. If it's a potential listing, obviously you can't get there early because the seller's still going to be there. But driving by early or driving by ahead of time can be valuable. Oh, hi, Don. Okay, go ahead.
Hey,
How
hey
are
Brittany,
you?
how are you?
Good,
Good. I
good.
just wanted, you were talking about property management and those of us who work rentals. I just wanted to add how important it is to make sure that your client, your owner client has spoken with the tenants and the tenants are on board. And if not, and you're somebody else showing the property and you're having problems with tenants, don't go in the place. If you go and your tenants are aggravated or angry, or don't try to say, hey, I'll only be there a minute. There's all kinds of things that are going on in all of our properties, and you never know what you're walking into. So just
Yep.
a caution about working in situations where there's tenants. Make sure you know what the situation is.
Very good. Very good advice, Don. Thank you. I also have someone in the chat, always have something with pockets. Absolutely. And I don't go anywhere without my phone on my person. That's a non-starter. I'm not going anywhere without having my phone in my hand, even though I have the watch, and for me, all my showing information is on my phone anyway, or my iPad that has cellular connectivity, but I'm not leaving that phone anywhere, and I would encourage you not to too. So I'm going to let Danielle launch the poll. We did come to 3:01. I'm gonna stop my screen share.